hello to the rest of the group. It is actually 3:30. So we will go ahead and get started and try to be as much on time as we can today. Thanks to everybody that is here on time, and I'm sure there'll be a couple of folks popping in the next couple of minutes here. We have a really exciting showcase today with Biobuilder and then also ETSU. So we'll introduce those folks in just a second. Just a couple of pieces of housekeeping that we've hit on kind of all these showcases. So if you've been to these any of the other showcases, then you'll have heard this before. But we are very excited to be wrapping up our showcase series today. This is the last of the 6. We've got all of these recorded, so if you missed one, you can find them on the STEM.LD website, which we will drop in the chat here, and we'll make sure that you have access to that. Likewise, any and all materials that are part of these showcases, the presentations, videos, things like that, they'll also live on that site. We do encourage you to go back and review them and to pass them around to anybody else at your schools that needs to see them. We know that each of you might just be representing your school, and so if you need to pass them to other folks, please do that. As a reminder, it is a requirement that each school send a representative to each of these showcases. So if you missed one, you can go back and watch the recording and get credit for it that way. But we've obviously, it's good to be here in person because you get to ask questions in real time and interact with some of our deep dive partners. So do make sure that as you're hearing these presentations, you're thinking of questions. There'll be time at the end of each part of the showcase to ask the things that are on your mind. So last thing I'll mention is that we do have an attendance survey in order to get credit for having been here for your school. We'll drop that in the chat at the very end of today's session, and you can fill it out. It just takes a second. Just make sure that you actually do fill it out, because if you don't, we won't count you as being here, and then we'll have to come back and pester you and go through that whole thing. So you can avoid that by filling out the quick survey. I'll talk in the in-between a little bit about next steps after today's showcase and after we've wrapped up this process, but let me kick it over to Dr. Natalie Caldell, who is coming to us from Biobuilder. She can tell us about herself and anything else she wants to share, and then she'll jump into her Biobuilder presentation. So thanks, Dr. Caldell.
Thank you. I will start by sharing my screen. Thank you all for joining today. It's really a pleasure to get to talk to y'all. Let's see. All right. Hopefully that looks pretty good. My name is Dr. Natalie Caldell. I am the founder and executive director of an organization called Biobuilder. We are a nonprofit organization that is about 10 years old. And I can very honestly tell you that 11 years ago, if you had asked me, I'd be running a nonprofit organization, I would have told you not a chance, right? So I'm a scientist by training and fell into teaching at the university level and love teaching. Found that the way I was teaching my students in biological engineering was just such a powerful way for them to learn and such a joyful way for me to teach that I was just very eager to share it broadly. And so Biobuilder really started with that idea, the hope that we could bring, as it says on this slide, tomorrow's science into today's classrooms. So with this presentation, I have 3 questions that will be sort of the organizing structure for this short talk. The questions are: who cares about synthetic biology? Why teach synthetic biology? And are there easy ways to get started? So to begin, I'll say, synthetic biology is a term that is used to describe how we can use DNA as a coding language for cells. Most people have heard that we can read the genetic code, look into the cells, identify the G's, A's, T's, and C's that are part of the DNA, read out that sequence. And so we can read the DNA. It is also now possible to write DNA with a synthesizer, so almost like a print function for DNA. And once you have a read and a write function, and you have a machine that will run that code, which is the cell, now you have a programming language. So synthetic biology is really used as a way to bring cells into a technology kind of framework. So really, who cares about synthetic biology? I would argue that we all should, but the truth is most people have probably never even heard of synthetic biology. Almost no one has. So this is a short little just snippet from a Google search that I did, where I asked Google how many times over the last couple of months have the terms synbio or synthetic biology been searched for, plugged into the Google search engine. And, the numbers that we get here are synbio in the hundreds and synthetic biology in the mid 5,000 arena. By contrast, if you ask Google how many times the word Wordle or Wordle Online has been plugged into Google, you get 5 million. So I'm sure most people on this call know what a Wordle is, but the image is there. It's an online game that you can play where you try to guess a 5-letter word, getting hints along the way based on your past guesses. So clearly, synthetic biology quite far behind. In fact, it is so far behind that if you ask Google how many times has a typoed version of the word Wordle, W-U-R-D-L-E, been put into the Google search engine, that is comparable to synthetic biology. So the takeaway from this is that synthetic biology is not a household word. It is not something that most people are looking for. And yet I would argue that it is really important to care about this field and to be aware of it. So we've answered sort of who cares about synthetic biology, and the answer is a very few number of us, but why care about it? And the answer is quite large. So this is a screenshot from a report that a consulting company just published a few weeks ago. The title of it was "Synthetic Biology is About to Disrupt Your Industry." And it says that by the end of this next decade, synbio could be used extensively in manufacturing industries that account for more than a third of global output, under 300 trillion in terms of value. So in terms of what synthetic biology can be used for, it is a very broad playing field. This is one more figure from that report, and it looks at what are the impacts on certain industries in the next handful of years, in the next decade, and a little bit further out than a decade. And you can see that there is a wide range of things that synthetic biology will impact, all the way from things from over-the-counter medicines and medical devices through to beauty and textiles and fabrics, and production of chemicals, meat and aquaculture, mining, water, cleanliness, construction. There is really almost limitless application spaces for this field. So the opportunity to bring synthetic biology across the country in an equitable way is high on people's minds. I'm talking to a lot of sort of community groups and people writing papers. And this is a figure from a postdoc that shared this figure with me, looking at how to build resilient US economies. And they specifically talk about the Midwest and the Southeast, that we would use synthetic biology because there are a lot of great rural natural resources that could create bio-based products. It also, synthetic biology, through access to educational materials and workforce development, allows us to capture a broader swath of the US workforce with innovation potential. So I would argue that we really should be caring about synthetic biology, and we may never reach that Wordle level of Google searches, but it will be a increasingly important aspect of society and how we work. So the next question I was going to ask is why we should teach it. And I mentioned that it will be connecting students to future careers and bringing rural and broad-based economic benefit across the country. I will also mention that it does, if we teach synthetic biology right, connect very naturally to standards and frameworks that are part of teachers' brain space and things that they are considering. So this is a figure from some of the teachers that they have shared with me about scientific and engineering practices that synthetic biology will really help meet. It also this figure that's on the right-hand side of this slide is an alignment of some of the Biobuilder work that my organization has provided and how it aligns with Tennessee standards for science and the different activities that Biobuilder provides and the kinds of endpoints that it will meet with the Tennessee standards. For sure, connection to jobs for your students, connection to frameworks and standards that are responsible, that you're responsible for teaching. And then super importantly, I think the idea that it really is empowering and energizing for teachers. So here's a small snippet of a recording that some of the teachers from Dobbins-Bennett made when they were presenting, gosh, it was already now 2 years ago, it's hard to believe, about the work with Biobuilder that they are doing in their schools.
Why that worked in such a way. Now, this was the highlight of my semester. So Natalie helped us. We wanted to Skype a scientist, and Drew Indy is a founder and a pioneer in synthetic biology. He is a bioengineering professor at Stanford, and he did a video conference with our kids for over an hour, just answering every question they had about building with biology.
He had no planned talk. You ask me a question and I'll tell you the answer. And our kids were like, they had all the questions. And because they had gone through the Biobuilder program, they were ready with questions. They had ideas. I want to talk to you about my plan. Like, it was such a meaningful moment for all of these kids.
I'm still like a fangirl. He liked a post I had on Twitter yesterday, and I'm like, Drew Indy liked my tweet.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it is good stuff. The opportunity to teach Biobuilder really is very empowering for teachers to bring the kind of teaching that they are looking to do into their classrooms. And then this is another figure that the teachers at Dobbins-Bennett shared with me, where the hope for this vision of science education is less memorization, less teacher as the information giver, but really more of students empowered as information gatherers and asking open-ended questions that really focus on building understanding and innovation and ideas and explanation of phenomena, which I know you have heard about in other of these presentations. So the notion that it is empowering to teachers is something I just want to show you briefly here. This is another sort of comment that a teacher had as I was discussing this with her as part of our online training that we're going to be offering for other teachers.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you have a good day, Natalie.
Thank you. It's been made so much better chatting with you. Thank you.
It has. I always so enjoy, and I mean exactly what I've said it 10,000 times now, that teaching this curriculum and having another community of people with similar values about teaching science is incredible. It is. It's so good for students, and it reminds you why you started doing this in the first place.
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful? Teachers start teaching for all the right reasons. And for us to be able to reconnect them to that love of teaching is just such a joy. It really is. So
makes a huge difference.
Yay. Keeping good teachers in the classrooms. That's what we want.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
So all of that, those little snippets were from the planning meeting that I had with Joanne Purdy, who's a teacher here in Massachusetts in a district a little north of Boston. She and I will be co-teaching a professional development workshop for teachers this summer. So hopefully between the connection to jobs and the alignment with standards and the empowerment and enrichment that it brings to teachers, the answers of why teach synthetic biology hopefully are a little bit addressed. And then the last question that I have here on this list are there easy ways to get started? And I will say for sure. So Biobuilder really is founded with the notion that we can provide some of those easy ways to get started. Biobuilder is an openly accessible website with content on it, including freely downloadable chapters, curriculum, online content for teachers as well as for students. We have a number of programs that we run in addition to curriculum that we offer. And so let me just spotlight a few of the programs that are going to be relevant because we are very open and eager to work with all the teachers in Tennessee and all who are on the line with any and all of these programs that I'll describe. So the first of them is a online 3-week sprint where we teach students the fundamentals of how do you design and program organisms to do useful things. That's a program we call our Idea Accelerator. It is a program that developed as a consequence of the pandemic. We really had not very much online training prior to March of 2020, but this is a program that has been so successful over the last couple of years that we are continuing to run it and look forward to running it from now until we continue to exist. So this is a 3-week sprint where there are online lectures where students learn the basics of how do you program a cell to do something that you would like it to do. And then they work in small teams to come up with a bio design that they can present as a team. In fact, we have a showcase of some teams in Georgia and California that will be on Thursday of this week at 3 o'clock. And we can drop that into the STEM.LD calendar if anybody would just like to drop in at 3 o'clock on Thursday and hear the teams present their ideas that they came up with within 3 weeks of learning how to program cells. The students who are super excited about doing that kind of work can continue their projects in a program that we have that we offer called the Biobuilder Club. Biobuilder Club runs from October to March, and this is a mentored team project where we pair teams of students up with a practicing bioengineer who help them develop their project idea. And then we culminate the year with a international conference and assembly, which in this case, this year again is going to be online. That one will be March 17th. That I know that is already in the calendar from STEMLD, and all who are on this call are more than welcome to join us to hear the incredible work that the teams of students from around the country and around the world have done to find solutions to global and local challenges that they think are super important. And they will present their talks and their posters. We'll have industry members there to ask questions of and interact with. And then finally, the curriculum, as I mentioned, of Biobuilder is freely available online. We have hands-on experiments that teachers co-developed with me so that they fit into their classrooms and their labs. We have bacteria that smell not so stinky anymore. Instead, they smell like bananas. We have yeast that can be engineered, that have been engineered to make a vitamin. So that's a vitamin-enriched yeast that can bake bread or brew beer. We have bacteria that can turn various colors like purple and green. And we have measurement tools that bacteria are used for as they produce a certain amount of enzymes. And all of this content, as I say, is on our website. We also have published a textbook by O'Reilly that we'd be delighted to send out. It's intended for people who are new to this. It's written with both teachers and students in mind. And it would be a good place to start if you're just sort of curious and would like to just peruse the kinds of things that we do with Biobuilder. And then we do offer professional development. It is not necessary to do this work to carry out a professional development workshop with us, but we love getting to know our teachers and helping them figure out how to best get started with Biobuilder's curriculum in their classrooms or in their after-school activities as enrichment or as core content that they teach to their students. So becoming a Biobuilder teacher is something that happens throughout the year, but it's a 2-week program where we open up a hybrid online learning platform for 2 weeks. And there are, a dozen or so videos to watch at your own pace. And then we ship a laboratory kit to teachers at their schools. And then we carry out the hands-on experiments online together. So synchronous Zoom sessions. So teachers can carry out these experiments in their classrooms and labs while we help them by carrying them out in the teaching facility that we have up here in Boston. Last video that I will show you is of the co-teacher that I have for the first portion of this workshop, Rebecca Revgala, who teaches with me. She's been teaching with me for 10 years. And here's a little bit of what attracted her to professional development with us.
More interesting. And so I was on this sort of AP biology blog, and this little registration thing came up, and it said, learn about synthetic biology at MIT. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. So I signed up. And then after I sent it in, I said, what's synthetic biology and what exactly did I sign up for? Because I had no idea. And I went to this week-long workshop with you. I met you. I met some other wonderful, wonderful teachers who were very like-minded, who just wanted to stay current with what's happening in biology, and more specifically, how to make, kind of sometimes boring topics like population dynamics or enzyme kinetics a little bit more interesting. And so I fell in love with Biobuilder. I don't think it was until maybe midweek that I actually started to think I knew a little bit about synthetic biology, because I was finally like, oh, okay, I think I kind of get it. I went back to school in September, and I talked with my administrator, and I said, we need to do this because it's really cool. And it's not just that it's cool, but it's also really practical. You can easily adapt the curriculum. They're in modules. So it's not as though you have to sort of load an already overloaded curriculum to try to get to those content, to that content.
So she speaks, I think, very elegantly and eloquently to the usefulness of Biobuilder for her teaching, and she is an absolute delight. So those were the 3 questions that I had planned to ask you. I will add one more, just because I can, I guess, and say, here's a 4th question. What if you don't teach this? Right? I mean, biology is commonly taught. It's taught middle school, it's taught high school. And this curriculum, I should have said, can be adapted, and we do adapt it to middle schools as well. We have some middle school curriculum. It's not as extensive as the high school curriculum, but we do have some middle school curriculum. But what if you just don't go this direction? And that, I will say, is, of course, okay, right? Like there is nothing that will happen if this does not get included in your existing curriculum. But there is I think, an opportunity cost to avoiding this, or not adopting some of this, and it can be adopted in small ways or large ways. This is a quote from Bill Gates that says that if he was a teenager today, he would be hacking at biology. He would be using DNA synthesis, the writing of DNA, to program cells as if they were living machines. And if you wanted to change the world in a big way, that's where he would have started now if he were a teenager, is in biological molecules. The analogy to computer programming, I think, is pretty instructive. So, if you think about, what you might have done, or what we could have considered if we did the Wayback Machine and turned back the clock 50 or 60 years, when computers were really just a fledgling idea, and people, hadn't thought about them as something that could do so much. Now fast forward to where we are, and there are so many computer science jobs. They are available all over the country. And we really can't teach enough students and can't get enough people through to proficiency in computer science to fill all the jobs that are ahead. And so, if we want to stay ahead of this next wave, DNA programming is, I think, the next wave. And so if we can include that and raise awareness around it, and let students know that there's a place for them in this future, we will be a little better off than the gap that we currently see in computer science education. And then finally, I'll just say that there are organizations that are helping to distribute this work around the country and around the world. BioMade is a Department of Defense funded manufacturing institute. There are a dozen manufacturing institutes around the country. This one was stood up about a year ago. And you can see that it has members in 26 of the states, Tennessee not being one of them, but hopefully ETSU will be our next partner soon. Biobuilder is one of the nonprofits that is part of BioMade, and through BioMade, they have partnerships and grant-making organizations. They have industries that will be hiring people trained in this way. So it is a growing community, I would say. So I started by mentioning that Biobuilder is aimed at bringing tomorrow's science into today's classrooms. I think we really do try to do that, and we'd be delighted to work with you in the capacities that make sense to do it with you guys there. Another tagline that we sometimes use for Biobuilder is to call it life-changing science education, and that's kind of a play on words where it is both editing living cells and then also changing the lives of teachers and students who learn this content, going on to different aspects of career and college and professional life. And then finally, the other thing that we sometimes hear about Biobuilder is that this is the kind of teaching and learning that we kind of wish we'd all had when we were in middle school and high school. It is very student focused, really believes in students as world changers and in their capacity and their potential to engineer a better world. And so that is the end of my presentation. I will stop sharing. And I am happy to keep an eye on the chat and answer questions there, or also just hand over to my wonderful friends and partners at ETSU, who I adore, and can see a little bit where this pipeline goes to.
So we do have a couple of minutes for question here, and I think you did a really great job of covering off on all the different things that Biobuilder is involved in and different ways that teachers can get involved. If you do have a question, now is a good time to throw it in the chat, or if you're not shy, you can come off mute and ask a question audibly. So feel free to do that as well. While we're waiting on that, I had a question, Natalie, that I think would be helpful to think about. We've got kind of a mixed group here of middle schools and high schools. Could you talk just a second about the ways that Biobuilder can be involved in each of those venues? Because I know that it can look a little bit different.
Yes, it absolutely can. And we are super excited to work with TNTP on a middle school focused curriculum that we call Cellcraft. It is a 1-week program that has both online and in classroom activities where students are sort of walked through the engineering process of how you would identify a challenge in the world that you might address with a biotechnology, and some of the ideas that can be generated by teams of students to design, build, and test that kind of a solution. So that's a middle school program that we call Cellcraft that we're very excited to roll out in partnership with TNTP, thanks to this STEM.LD grant. And then at the high school level, we have in-class and out-of-class time work. So the Idea Accelerator is sometimes brought into classrooms as part of a module that they're running. Maybe it's after a standardized test gets run and it's an additional activity. At Dobbins-Bennett, they run it every year with all of their students. That includes what they call their neediest pumpkins as well as their advanced classes, and all students will be getting a Biobuilder experience prior to graduating. And those who, as I say, are excited to do the labs, so they do the labs as part of their classwork. They do a design activity where they have teams of students design and then pitch their ideas to a panel of experts who are judging them, kind of a Shark Tank kind of approach. And then we would love to have a Biobuilder Club launched to help them further develop those projects and then hand them into the higher ed that's in the area, and they could be further engaged in professional career and college work.
So in short, just a tremendous opportunity to participate in some really cutting edge, cool things. And the thing that I really want to underscore, and partially why I asked the question, is there's an immense amount of flexibility here. So with all of our partners, there is a tendency, because they're just bringing so many excellent things to the table, to feel a little bit overwhelmed. And we don't want school staff to feel that way at all. All of these things are very approachable. There's a ton of support in place, and things can really be modified to fit what would make sense for your school system. So, and I have a feeling that Anant and his team will be sharing out some very similar things in just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to talk just a second more about paperworky type things, and give anybody that has a question a chance to drop it into the chat. So Dr. Coldell mentioned that on Thursday, there's an event coming up, and I just want to use this as an opportunity to highlight our STEMLD event calendar that is on the main site. That is a great thing to have bookmarked, to be checking out all the time, because events like that with Biobuilder, but with all of our partners, and really some things that are just community events that are in the STEM world, we're going to be using that to promote them on our site, on our calendar. And if you're ever wondering what's going on with STEMLD, that's a great place to look. Our partners do a good job of keeping their activities updated. So as things get scheduled for summer, and as professional development opportunities get scheduled throughout the year, as out of school time activities happen, they'll be on that site, and we'll make sure to keep that updated. And again, that's on the STEMLD website. We'll drop that in the chat here as we're discussing. I did also want to touch briefly on, so I talked about the attendance survey. The partnering process will happen starting tomorrow. So what we're really driving at here is each of these showcases is giving you access to a partner, to a window into their world and what they're bringing to the table in terms of opportunities for staff and for students. And so exiting today's showcase and jumping into tomorrow, you'll have heard from all of the partners once ETSU has their go here, and you'll have the opportunity to start selecting those deep dive partners to work with beginning in the summer or in the fall, if there's not necessarily a summer thing that fits. So you don't have to partner with one partner or two partners or 10 partners. We would like to see, our goal is to get 80% of teachers partnered. So that's a big number, and it's something that we can work towards if it doesn't make sense for your school, particularly if you're just coming on board this year. But we'd love to see as many partnerships happening as possible. And so it might be that, hey, some teachers decide that they really want to partner with Biobuilder, and maybe some other teachers see a great fit with ETSU. That would be awesome. Or you can partner as a department or an entire school. There's lots of flexibility there. That process will begin again starting tomorrow, with the caveat or the asterisk that only schools that have actually viewed all of the showcases will have access to do that. So you don't get to pick your partners until you've actually either attended all of these, which some of you have, and gold star, kudos to those that have attended all these live, or caught up some with the recordings. So if you haven't done that, we'll be reaching out and making sure that you have what you need to get that done, and letting you know maybe which ones you have or haven't done. But yeah, if you want access to that as soon as possible, if you want to start talking among your teams about who you want to partner with within your school, that would be the step to complete, would be to have attended or to have viewed all of these showcases and filled out the attendance form for each one. So that's enough rambling for me for the moment. If you have any questions about that, of course, you can drop it in the chat. We'll catch it at the end. Let me turn it over to Dr. Godbole and Dr. Christian. I think Dr. Christian will be going first. Is that right? Okay, very good. So I'll let y'all introduce yourselves and then tell us a little bit about what's happening with ETSU, and you should be able to share your screen and do all that. So awesome. Yep, there it is. We can see a screen.
Okay, so hi, I am Dr. Ginger Christian, and I think I'm going to start the conversation today. Can we see the presentation at this time?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, very good. So I do want to share. Give me just a second. There. So while I'm getting ready to get that started, so Natalie, big shout out for the E on your vest. I love that you came prepared with some school spirit for ETSU. I think that is fantastic, really wonderful. So I do want to introduce myself, and I'm going to start with school culture and climate. I am Ginger Christian, and I'm assistant professor at ETSU in the ELPA department, and we are bringing a different lens to this conversation. We're here to talk about school culture and climate. And so I'm also going to actually begin with a question. I would ask each of you as participants with us today to really just take a moment. You can close your eyes. I want you to revision your schools. If your schools looked different 5 years from today, and what they sound like, what they look like, what STEM spaces are designed and you are using that maybe today don't exist, what would that look like? So as you're thinking about that, what comes to your mind? So our work with this partnership is very specific, and I'm struggling to see for some reason, Law, how I can share full screen.
At the top left of your screen there, I think there's a little like projector screen with an arrow. You might be able to click that. That button right there up above home, where it says home.
So I'm looking at, normally I can just see it. You can see my cursor, so tell me where to go.
So up above the home tab on your screen.
Yes.
Yeah. So just to the right of that arrow there, couple icons, that one right there. Yeah, click that one, see if
there we go. Thank you. Okay. So Dr. Virginia Foley and Mr. Scott Lamy are partnering with ELPA so that we can help you think through this. So if I asked you right now, what is the vision for your school for STEM? When you're thinking about your teams of teachers and your administrative teams, what is your vision? And I'm going to start with a story. So at Anderson Elementary, I have just transitioned from the principalship. So I've served as a supervisor in personalized learning initiatives in a rural county, and I've served as a principal for the last 5 years at a Bristol City School, Anderson Elementary. And we entered into a transformation process where we were very connected to our STEM program through our literacy initiative, and really introduced and shifted spaces to include maker spaces and CTE labs. So our middle and high school students had connections. Our high school spent a lot of time in our middle school training the students about robotics, helping them think about possibilities in the fields of CTE they would be introduced to. So our goal through school culture and climate is to help school leadership teams, specifically principals, revision the focus for STEM in the school. So specifically, we'll provide leadership team training for principals and teacher leaders, design and implement a STEM school vision. If you do not currently have a STEM vision, that is the place that we start. So in 5 years, and we're starting year 2 of this 5-year grant, what is the vision for STEM in your school community? How does it connect your middle to your high school? What opportunities through out of school time that you can design from your middle to your high school can be created and implemented and then sustained even after the duration of the grant? A great example of that work in progress was several years ago in a rural city or a rural county district. It was Washington County. We worked with our middle schools and created what was called Design Camp, and students had a full week of investigation at the high school to think through the different career and tech ed options that were available to them. So when they transition into the high school setting, they have some prior knowledge about what they might have interest in, and also an experience where they are investigating the very concepts that we're talking about in our multiple showcase activities. So what works best for your school will in large part depend upon the teachers you have in place, the expertise, and then the vision to expand expertise this year and in subsequent years of the grant. So what does strategic planning allow to school improvement goals look like? So when you're thinking about today, we're going to use Biobuilder as a great example. If you currently do not have this opportunity in your school, but you have a teacher who is interested in this work, what are the plans for professional learning And then for sustainability year to year, and how are we communicating that to parents, families, and teachers to expand our scope of influence for students to have access to this middle to high to college transition? What are the objectives for innovative outcomes for school sessions? So this year we had the opportunity to connect with Unicoi High School, fantastic school. We spent the afternoon, and this would be the type of work we would bring to your school. Would you want to do vision work and strategic planning work around the STEM opportunities for your teachers and school community? We listened deeply to the teachers as they celebrated what they do well in the school, but also identified areas that they wanted to strengthen. We spent time investigating who are the STEM champions in that community. What are the partnerships that can be developed and then cultivated for an opportunity for middle to high school transition? Who will be that STEM champion? And a myriad of companies came to mind for that work. Then also we asked teachers to dream. We asked them to think about, and principals to think about, what does not exist today that as a result of this grant in the next 3 to 5 years can exist for our students in this school community. One of the ideas that emerged in that particular high school created around the idea of CTE teachers who said, I really want to do some opportunity for work with a math teacher or a science teacher, but we don't have a space for that. So we looked at the library, and they are currently in the process of redesigning that library because that space is large enough for 2 classes to come together in a safe environment and investigate the very things teachers are learning and put that into practice. The next step of that is for the middle school to come and experience those showcases at the school. So thinking through the opportunity of showcase through the grant in this virtual world and in person at ETSU, we just had a showcase and we're about to have another one. I think it's at Carson. Where's it going to be, Law? Help me out with that. That's going to be with If I Had a Hammer, correct?
Correct. Yep.
If I Had a Hammer. Yes. So taking the idea of those showcases that are regionally centered and bringing those to our high schools where then our parents and future students can experience that in real time. We're going to develop sustainable and long-term outcomes for STEM cross-curricular connections from that middle to high school transition. I'm going to share another example of work that's unfolded in our first year of the partnership. It's a middle to high school connection in another rural county district. The middle school principal was a former high school teacher and an assistant principal and has this vision for this CTE connection. And his middle school teachers have been involved in the grant in year 1. High school teachers at that high school have been involved in the grant in year 1. They are in the process of designing a CTE space so that the middle school students can investigate lab connections that directly correlate to their high school opportunities. Additionally, they're creating a maker space in the library. The grant through the culture and climate work helped facilitate those conversations of what is our STEM vision? What are our strategic plans to reach that vision? How will our school look? How will we be different in 5 years? And what are the processes in place to connect the strength of our district while we recognize what we do not have yet and advance that through the partnerships with STEM.LD grant? It's really exciting work, and that work is going to be, we're already in the design process for that. So then identify and maximize those STEM.LD community champions, design and implement cross-curricular out-of-school opportunities in learning spaces. An example where we can help you think through the leadership lens of that for culture and climate. How are we making sure that our middle school teachers understand what is available at the high school? How are we making connections to our high school teachers to using the new learning that's occurring and their connections to the partnerships that are unfolding in the transition to the college? Specifically, we're going to focus on growth mindset and designing a positive school culture. We know that when teachers are excited and happy at school and students are excited and happy in school, we see a rise in achievement and in growth scores. Partners will work with ELPA, school culture coaches, and that would be myself, and Dr. Virginia Foley, who served in the principalship and supervision, and Mr. Scott Lamy, who's a former science teacher, and join professional learning sessions that focus on leadership practices and a growth mindset for 6th through 12th grade. We will also facilitate leadership team activities that result in STEM.LD multi-year strategic plans and connections to college and career options. It is a personalized approach so that we can look at the strength of your district and your school and your personal needs and build on what works well as you think about going from good to better to best with those leadership practices. I will tell you with experience this year, it's allowed us to slow down, to reset as we're moving through the pandemic, to redesign what we would like schools to look like, and to revision so that we have a communication that's exciting about new opportunities for our students and teachers. It's 2 sessions each semester and a summer leadership training and planning session. If you would like to have us on the campus, we are coming to the campus, and/or we will provide that through a virtual setting. So Dr. Godbole is going to connect this to the content that's available through ETSU.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to go to full screen. And as Ginger said, I will be talking about the content initiatives. All of them are tied together pretty much like a Biobuilder is, as a very innovative area of STEM, which I call not just STEM, but STEM 2.0 or 5.0 or something, because it is STEM the way it should be. So I'll talk about some of these initiatives. Right now, we have 5 or 6 STEMLD counties that we partner with. And the purpose of the showcase is to attract many more partners. And so in calendar year 2022, we will be offering trainings and workshops in 4 areas, which I think of as STEM 2.0, statistics with the open source language R, epidemiology, very topical in the age of COVID, and artificial intelligence. Ginger's talked about school culture already. So we expect 2 rounds of such trainings, possibly in the late spring, possibly in the summer, the first one, and then in the fall, each lasting about 8 hours. 8 being an average, it might be more or less. So statistics with R. As I pointed out, R is an open source language that is used, for example, locally at Eastman. And I have 3 daughters, and all of them learned R in their professional life. They got nice jobs, and they were told they had to learn R. So that is something to note. Along with Python, it can be accessed via laptop, Chromebooks, or even in the cloud. It is free, absolutely free. So that is an advantage. And its flexibility, I think, is what makes it very, very, very useful. It is the language of choice along with Python of professionals in many fields, as I pointed out. Most of these professionals learn and master R as part of their job. But what we are proposing that our teachers and their students learn the language along with their required coursework. And the required coursework I will be talking about is Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Integrated 1, Integrated 2. And since this is a required part of a required class, you don't have narratives floating around that, oh, those CS classes are filled just with boys. The girls are, everyone has to take Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. And that is what I think is likewise with Biobuilder embedded into high school biology. Everyone has to take it and learn how to code within the cell structure. So we have a stats team. We have a professor of statistics. We have Dr. Lewis in medical statistics, and Emilia Alfaro, who's a stats major and tennis player with a phenomenal grade point. And she's probably she's the prime mover of this group, I think, so far at least. We have created a mapping of Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and integrated math standards using R. A list of ways one can access R, and a getting started cheat sheet created by Dr. Hicks, which would probably, between them, these would take up maybe the first 3-4 hours of the first content training. And the timeline is that we will cover material in Algebra 1 in the spring, standard by standard. R would be embedded into each topic. For example, measures of central tendency, mean, median, and mode. We'll be using basic language, scripts, and syntax, followed by examples that are routine classroom exercises to others that exemplify the dexterity of R to handle large and even massive data sets. So students in 10th grade are being made aware of the fact that data doesn't come clean and simple. It is huge, but R, if it can do a data set this big, it can do one that big also. Algebra 2 will be covered in the spring, and should the need arise, statistics and AP stats would be touched upon in calendar year 2023. Integrated 1 and 2 used to be taught at Bristol, but I think, and Ginger, you can tell me if this is correct, it's being phased out, is what I heard. If not, we'll do integrated 1 along with Algebra 1, integrated 2 along with Algebra 2.
Yes, you're correct.
Standard, and do examples, theory, syntax. When it comes to classroom implementation, I don't think what we are envisioning will take more than 7 or 8 hours embedded into the day-to-day teaching of statistics. So you teach the stats, you do stuff on your TI-83, and then you turn to R and you're doing massive data sets. That's the concept that we have. Artificial intelligence. So we have a nice team here. Ariel Cintron, who is also a Amazon Web Services cloud practitioner. That's a last certification that he picked up recently. Dr. Ryan Nivens will do the educational pedagogical oversight. And Jennifer Lauer, who is in the ETSU Masters in Mathematics program, is the GA associated with that. We are following a curriculum called AI for All. It is something that is interdisciplinary and approachable for people without CS or math backgrounds. It can be taught in remote or in-person settings, and every module that they teach is very relevant to the workforce. So for example, I'll read out a few: artificial intelligence and dance, artificial intelligence and facial recognition, artificial intelligence and the environment, AI and neural networks, AI and drawing, and so on and so forth. There's deep dives, but there's also introductions aligned to several standards: engineering, technology, ELA, and computer science standards. So that is good. And this is an online platform where educators can access curriculum, resources, and all the materials needed to teach artificial intelligence in a setting which does not have to be STEM. So what we find is that the curriculum is appropriate for high school students in the English language arts, social studies, computer science, CTE, and other areas. So this, I think, can get a young person extremely excited about learning something that they read about every day, from the time they go into the grocery store and get coupons printed out, and how do they know to print out coupons that I need, and so on. And it's a student-centered curriculum with active learning, final projects, and exposure to a variety of career paths. There's a focus on ethics, the societal impacts of AI, and diverse role models who represent a variety of backgrounds and lived experiences. And that, I think, is important to build into any STEM 2.0 curriculum like that. And in this year, we're going to focus on chatbot assistance and sentiment analysis, which Ariel has tried to tell me what it is. So that's artificial intelligence. Epidemiology is something we've done in high school. It has been embedded in and mapped to Biology 1, 2, and Algebra 2 standards. Yeah, so as I said, epidemiology and AI are like STEM 2.0 fields. We have two expert high school teachers who are trainers. We have a postdoc from the University of Colorado in Boulder, pedagogical oversight provided by Dr. Tai, and we have a graduate assistant who is doing her PhD in epidemiology. So it's a team of people who are doing a variety of things. I'm going to take a look at my phone to see what time I'm having still. So the trainers ran a TSIN sponsored epidemiology workshop last year. And this was what they took and improved and replicated and gave it solid teeth for the STEM.LD program in 2021. And for 2022, we plan on 2 more rounds of epidemiology training. The mathematics teacher is interested in biostatistics, which is a sister discipline to epidemiology. So we'll be doing analyses using Excel at first, then materials developed by the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. So it's actually model-based. You can do things like zombie attack models, and that can be your epidemic, and you can play around, change the parameters, input different numbers, and see interesting things happen. Yeah, the background is that we started all this with Governor School in 2020. And the methods that we're using, the team is using, is CERs, claim, evidence, and reasoning, project and problem-based learning, storylines, and they are creating many new materials that we are training the teachers with first and mapping to standards so as to be possible to implement it at the right time, at the right level, and for the right amount of time. Jennifer Price, who is on the call, and Megan Quinn, who was the chair of ETSU Epidemiology, will be working as our YouTube channel producers. They will be working with me to lead fundraising efforts for teacher stipends. And specifically, they'll inform the public, affiliated partners, and social media followers of a bunch of things, such as the origin and aims of the grant, along with some details of each of the subcomponents, what has been accomplished so far, upcoming events and plans, and success stories along the way. Measurable impacts. So that is what they are going to start this year. And I think this is an important part of the ETSU message as we send it forth.
I would add to that we're really encouraging our partner schools to tell your story, that let's celebrate the positive and powerful stories that are occurring in our schools. And, you know, I shared some stories with you today, but we really do want to help support your ability to tell that story. You're going to see a link to a website we've designed because we want to showcase the powerful and promising things that are happening in our public schools. And so that is another piece that we'll be able to help you think about in your very, very busy days and support you so that you're able to tell this story in your school community about where you are and where you're going. Thank you, Dr.
Yep. So the ETSU website that Ginger mentioned is that all our content and related material is stored at the ETSU STEM.LD website, which we will give the Niswonger Foundation a link to at the moment we have something more concrete in there. And it is created by Scott, who's our genius worker. He does so many things, and the site is being populated daily. And I think it promises to be a valuable end of project resource that chronicles everything that was done in the ETSU subcontract. And you can, hopefully I can click on this. And so this is the website. And do I have to share another screen? Or can you folks see this? Okay.
You probably,
yeah, momentarily share another. Here we go. So this is the STEM.LD webpage. It talks about the components of the STEM.LD US Department of Education grant. Then it has links to epidemiology and so forth. You can click on something like epidemiology, and then that gives you a video by Chris Bowen. And these things refuse to connect, so I can't help you with that. But a lot of the material, not everything, because the team, Rachel and Chris, feel that not everything should be over there, but we should have a good chunk of materials that keeps people being curious about what else might have been offered as part of the workshops. And then you've got statistics with R. We'll be putting those documents up. This is the very reason why we don't want to link it from the Niswonger Foundation webpage as yet, because we don't want any coming soons over there. We want content right up there, dates and so on. So this is a resource that I think will be valuable. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing entirely, and that's my presentation. And
very good. And kudos to both you and Natalie on y'all's presentations. Right in the time window. I love it. It makes my job as a semi-moderator much easier.
Hey, can I say one more thing? You know, talking of Biobuilder, it's sort of permeated our region like a virus almost. It's like everyone wants. Okay, so let me say, Niswonger Foundation, Dobbins-Bennett High School, ETSU Governor School is going to do a component of Biobuilder. The Tennessee STEM Innovation Network, the teachers from Dobbins-Bennett, Evie and Amanda, they will be doing a workshop over the summer. The ETSU Research Corporation. I mean, everyone wants to do synthetic biology in the region, and I think I'm really excited about seeing this go someplace huge.
So Adnan is. Oh, go ahead, Natalie.
I was just going to say that you are the model for the country, because everybody is looking at this region of Tennessee and saying, look at how much they are accomplishing there. It clearly can happen everywhere. So it is just world-class work that everybody is doing, and it is inspiring the rest of the country to follow suit. It's really incredible. I cannot overstate how wonderful and important this partnership has been.
Sometimes it's inspiring for me just to sit on the calls and listen to the things that are happening. It's just cool stuff. And I do think it underscores something that's a real strength of STEMLD. Organically, if you've been in any of the other showcases and of course here today, you've seen how partnerships across groups have grown, even if they wouldn't necessarily just align with each other. There's been a lot of cross collaboration. And that means that if you are thinking about who you're partnering with, you really ought to think about those collaborations. So, for example, Natalie mentioned in the chat that they do a lot of work with R. ETSU is doing a lot of work with R. There's immense power in combining those two groups. And as they revealed on the call today, they already play well together. They already work quite well together. So I would really encourage you as school staff thinking about your deep dive partnerships with STEMLD to think outside the box a bit and think about how collaborations could work to advance the joint goals of different departments and different teachers to really provide the best experience possible for you and your students. If you are a new school just joining us for this year and you're just picking your first deep dive partners, then of course you're starting from a clean slate and you can partner with any of these folks. If you are a returning school, one of the things that we're going to be asking you is to let us know if you are re-upping your partnerships with your current partners, which is great, or if you're going to make a change, we'll ask about that as well. But there is also capacity and room pretty much across the board for folks to add new partners. And so we really strongly encourage and really like to see folks think about, hey, if you got started with one partner or another, is there a partner that you can add that would further build out your capacity? I am going to go ahead and share my screen so that folks can see the attendance link if you are watching a recording. We do have, Brachet's already dropped it in the chat, so thank you for doing that, Brachet. We got a couple of minutes left here. We can hang out on the call. If you have questions for Anant and his team or Natalie and her team, we'd be happy to field those. And John has also dropped our STEMLD Partner Showcase page in there. So any questions you've got, go ahead and drop them in the chat. I will just say, again, make sure you fill out your attendance form here, either this link or the one that's in the chat. And then be looking for some follow-up communication from us over the next few days as we get the deep dive partnering process rolling. If you have questions for any of these partners, they are very accessible. You can reach out to us and we can connect you directly. You've seen their websites, so it's very easy to get questions answered. If you think of something in the middle of the night, let us know and we'll make sure that we get the information to you that you need. So it is 4:33. I don't see anything popping in the chat. Type real fast if you're going to put something in there. We will hang out just a minute here if you have something. Otherwise, feel free to head on. Just make sure you fill out your attendance survey again. No, I keep saying that, but it is important. And we look forward to working with y'all in the next few weeks as we continue the STEMLD process for the spring. So thank you all for your attendance.